Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining on time and a little early. We're just going to give attendees a few more minutes to join. I see some people coming in, so thank you, Joe. I appreciate the claps. Kind of hang tight with us for a minute while we get people joined. Just as a reminder, we're unable to interact with attendees, so your mics and cameras are turned off. We'll go over how to ask questions in a few minutes.
I don't see our fearless leader on yet.
There's some sporadic internet problems throughout the country, so I don't know. I don't know. I know it's
Could be
heard. Yeah.
sunspots or
Yeah.
international strife. These are all
Yeah.
components of
I
living
thought of it.
in today's world. Yes.
Thought of it. It's the first thing I thought of. Oops.
Okay, well that ding sounds like a good place to kick everything off with. So, good morning everyone. Thank you so much for joining this morning. My name's Kristen. I'm a consultant with Harbor Networks. I just want to take a minute to go through a few things before we get started. As I mentioned, unfortunately, we're unable to interact with attendees, so mics and cameras are turned off. But if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see a smiley face. If everyone could just click that emoticon, if you're able, send that along just so we know you can hear us. Um, Feel free to send those throughout the presentation as well. Let us know you're still with us. Most importantly, next to that is a box with a question mark. This is what we're going to be using to answer any and all questions that come through. We will do our best. I imagine we'll get through the majority of them on this, as we are giving away a couple $100 Amazon gift cards to the people who participate most. So make sure you get your questions in. We'll reach out to the winners after the presentation. At the end of this webinar, we're going to have a 4-question survey. It'll pop up on your screen automatically. Just go ahead, click through that. It's just a couple clicks just to give us some feedback on future webinars. Lastly, as I mentioned, we will be giving away a couple $100 Amazon gift cards to those who participate, ask the most questions via that question mark box. And everybody that joins will receive a lunch gift card from Giftly. So please know that when you receive that via email, it is not a phishing attempt. It is all for you. Now that logistics are out of the way, I just want to introduce John Flory. He's our CISO over here at Harbor Networks. And I'll hand it over to Jeremy Vignaux, our VP of Technology at Harbor Networks, to kick this off.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Fairly short webinar this morning. We're going to review some things about the security landscape, and then we're going to dive down into some specifics about hosted PBX, hosted phone, unified communications as a service, any number of acronym there, how that overlays in cybersecurity and security posture and protection. I'm joined by John Flory. He and I will ping pong back and forth, talk about some things. But please, feel free to post your questions as we go here, and we'll dive right in. So I think what we wanted to start with first is sort of review some of the the basics about the environment we're living in here. The advent of the internet is great. We're all connected, but it does mean that you're at risk from people very far away, regardless of where you physically are. And we certainly have a lot of different threats coming at us from all different angles. Some of them are delivered via email, some of them are delivered via text, some of them are delivered via telephone, some are delivered in the physical U.S. postal mail, and so forth. We certainly have a lot of cyber criminals out there. Most of this, if not all of it, is driven by money. There's some political, a small subset of that are people who are politically motivated, but primarily it's people who just want money. There are all kinds of different vectors for them getting in you, whether it be uh, calling people, leaving things in the parking lot, and we'll talk about some of those things like that. There are so many different different bad actors out in the field here. Some of them are people. Some of them are automated software programs, bots, networks of compromised PCs. I don't think we're at the Skynet artificial intelligence threat level yet, although some people like Elon Musk may feel like we are headed in that direction. But you just need to be on your game from all the different angles. Some of the ones on this list are known, obviously black hat criminals and social engineering people and cyber terrorists, but there are professional hacking groups that you can hire, and they'll do anything for $1 and so forth. Not to completely overwhelm you with doom and gloom here, but we are definitely under attack every day. And it's something that your vigilance must be kept at all times. You can't really go on vacation ever, and so forth like that. John, why don't you just? Well, actually, no. I'll jump in here, and I'll come back to you, John. Just to review a couple of these things, because these terms are, in the news. They're in the vernacular of people in the IT firms and the cybersecurity realms. We've talked about phishing in the past in some of our webinars. Primarily, this is delivered via email. It's a lure. It's a link in an email for you to click, whether it's about a news story, about a gift card you might have won, about a potential login for your Amazon account or whatever. People are under constant attack by phishing attempts. And it's an ongoing battle to educate users and let them work as well. In vishing and smishing, both lures as well, but delivered in a different way. Vishing typically delivered via telephone call. You've gotten these phone calls on your cell phone on your home numbers, saying that Microsoft or Apple support wants you to press 1 to talk about activity. These are just lures to suck you in there as well. And then smishing, kind of an odd acronym to talk about text messaging, whether it's SMS or MMS. You've been receiving these as well. Confirming an appointment for something you didn't do, click here to donate money to something or whatever, unsolicited luring text trying to get you to click a link, take over your phone, get you to do information. There are other ones that certainly get less press. Baiting is a broad category. We can throw some things in there like distributing flyers, sticking QR codes on lampposts to help you, to lure you into clicking on something that's going to take you to a website that's bad or might have bad code or an exploit on it. Dropping USB sticks in the parking lot that you might be tempted to bring in and plug into your computer and spread things like that. So all kinds of different things can be delivered in lots of different ways. In a quid pro quo example, this could be a phone call or an email where you're asked to fill out a survey in exchange for maybe a gift card or something like this. And the point there is less about hacking you, but more to gain information, maybe get some private identifying information about your address or your son's name or whether you have kids and things like that. So literally, they're offering you something in exchange for something, and typically it's something, what you're giving them is private information that will then be used in a nefarious way later. Probably the last one, in a third-party weaponization, sometimes this has to do with things like physical access. Having a cleaning staff or a construction crew have access to your physical office where they could potentially find a sticky note on the bottom of your computer that has your passwords and things like that. So you have to be obviously careful about physical access and credentials for people who come in. So, it's never ending. I think that what we talk about today with UCaaS and hosted voice and communications, some of the existing phone systems and systems out there are subject to several of these, not just hacking on computers. John, why don't you talk a little bit about phishing a little bit more, or maybe another example. We'll kick through. We'll get down to the meat of things.
Yeah, Jeremy, awesome introduction. It's great. This is a good topic because this is about reducing the threat landscape, right? You know, a lot of my role is I help people when they get hacked. So we're seeing it all. I love how you mentioned the QR codes, right? That's something where when it blew up during COVID, it's everywhere, and now these criminals are taking advantage of it, right? So you go to a restaurant, you get the menu, you don't want the real menu, you just want to do the QR code. Well, a lot of times, just like in on a gas station, right, where they would on the credit card readers, right? That would be an old new tactic is we put our sticker right over the QR code, right? Next person comes along, they hit it. So you have to be really careful. I personally would ask for a paper menu when I go. I can't see that well, but I guess I have new eye drops now. I don't know if you heard about these, Jeremy. You put them in once a day, and then
The ones you don't
from
need the reading glasses for, right?
yeah, man, crazy. One drop in each eye every day. So I would take advantage of that if you needed to, and don't use the QR codes. The criminals are attacking the slide that Jeremy opened with. We are under attack. That's what's happening. You know, even a couple things that went through my mind when you were talking, Jeremy's third party, right? We're talking about these third party weaponization. I think a supply chain, the heck is happening to us? The software and the tools and what we're buying to protect us and to help us are now being infected because these criminals are smart and they know that that's a great way, right, to get a lot of money and hurt a lot of people. Jeremy started it by saying it started when we went digital, when we went to the internet, right? And made me think of the dark web. The dark web was actually built to be very good. It was built for military, to be covert, to be able to communicate, right, and a separate, out of band way. And what happened was, Bitcoin, right, cryptocurrency came along, and what cryptocurrency brought into play there was cryptocurrency is peer-to-peer transacting, right? We don't need a third party, i.e., a bank, i.e., regulators, i.e., somebody looking over everything. And you can transact anonymously if you know what you're doing. So, because of that, the dark web became very, very bad, where you buy all kinds of things, including pay for performance hacking. So you give a list. Hey, these 10 people I want to get, and if you get these things that I tell you I want, you get paid. Literally, that's available. They have managed services and help desks and 5-star ratings because they figured out that's a lot of money. You could go rob a bank. You know, we were able to get some criminals extradited, believe it or not, working on a large breach. And we ended up working with the FBI, but it was a Secret Service that got involved in the end. But we were able to they weren't in a country that protected them, right? We were able to get them extradited. And, we were able to talk to them. And the actual hacker, and this is ROI, think about this, or return on investment for a hacker. If you go and rob a bank, right? We were talking about to one of our ethical hackers about this. You go to rob a bank, the average take is, I'll give it a second for you. Average take's like $800. So think about the risk that you're taking to get $800 when you rob a bank, right? On the internet, it's global, safe havens, no extradition. We got lucky. These people were not in a place that was protected, but there's places all over the world. Russia, China. I could go on and on with that list. So that means that it's open. There's nothing. The FBI, Secret Service, nobody can help you, right? So we have to protect ourselves because we just can't get to these criminals. It's actually very large financial vectors. It helps their economy. It's like the third or pillar in some of these economies around the world. So the government actually promotes them hacking us. Okay, so that's what we're up against. Vishing is something I feel like I get vishing calls every day. If I'm to the point where if I do not know the number, I'm not answering. I used to say hello, or think I
Yeah.
was clever. Well, they'll record you, get voice algorithms. I just saw of a bank, I think it was in Switzerland, where they used speech being able to hack into the bank, literally talking to a teller that talked to the person before. They were able to put together. So these are some of the things that's going on. Go ahead, Jeremy. I know you wanna
Yeah, I
say
was going
something.
to say there's specifically about phishing, phone calls, sort of phishing with a phone call. One of the places we've been struggling with for years is that the caller ID that's presented to you is not always genuine. It was trivial for someone to steal someone else's number on an outbound call. There are some technologies that will begin to show much more over the next year around signing and verifying caller ID so that when you do receive a call from Bank of America, if it says verified in some fashion, you'll know that that's actually coming from Bank of America. That said, you can still put your skepticism hat on, call back, go to their certified website to confirm, or a bill to confirm that you're calling the correct number back. There are a fair number of fake phone numbers out on Google. If you search for like Amazon tech support, you could find a number that wasn't really them. So being very careful about callbacks, verification, and maybe not even trusting all of that if it's something really important as well. Just an example on the SMS texting, this is a common one, getting a FedEx package code, click here to do this, just to lure you in to click that, to potentially take you to a website that could either ask you to put in your name, try to take over your phone, try to take over your computer, lots of different things there as well. Some of these can be exploited even without you clicking on them. We're in some respects we're at the mercy of Apple and Android to close their holes and things like that. So this is all part of staying on board, keeping your devices up to date, doing software upgrades, even though you think they're a pain, but they're critically important as well. And then phishing, we've sort of beat this one to death, but it's really the number one vector still for sending links and queries through email, forging, making it look like it's a bill, making it look like it's an invite, making it look like it's from the CEO asking you to do a favor. I mean, there's just so many examples. There's just so many ways of doing this, and this can be even worse if somebody has been compromised, because then they can start sending out emails from their account, which is valid, and it looks like they're coming from them. And this is where you teach people about culture. And and if you received an unsolicited email with an attachment, you call the person back and say, hey, did you really mean to send this to me? Why did you send it to me? A verification is always part of that. That was really just to get you into the mood to talk about cybersecurity, remind you of all the dark clouds that are out there all trying to get us. But the meat of what we wanted to talk today is how hosted voice or hosted unified communications can be something to help mitigate some of the cybersecurity risk. And what we hear a lot from customers after they've run an internal penetration test or an audit or so forth like that their on-premise based phone system that's been around for 5, 10, 15, 25 years is being flagged as having a lot of vulnerabilities. You'll find things like a voicemail server running OS2 or Unix from the early days of AT&T, or a Windows 98 computer doing something that it shouldn't do. And part of this has to do by the fact that internal and external IT departments are typically loath to mess with these systems. They're closed systems. They don't want to break them. They don't want to take the phone system down. So they're often not patched on a regular basis like the rest of their service. Some vendors have told them specifically not to patch them because they haven't gone through QA testing and they run through a risk. So these oftentimes become one of the riskiest devices on the network. The old servers, the old voicemails, the old PBXs and things like that. Many of them are connected to the network because they're either there for administrative purposes or connecting multiple sites and so forth like that. This risk factor is one that sometimes makes people decide that it's time to either upgrade or replace that premises-based system. And any vector you have out there, that old fax machine, copy printer combo thing, or some weird device from Pitney Bowes that connects to the internet, these are all potential things that could be compromised from the fault of the manufacturer or just some other vector and so forth. So all these concerns potentially raise the question is, if I did move my communications to a cloud service, how would this actually reduce my risk? Well, the easy one is that there's less equipment on site. Typically a cloud phone system or communication system, the only devices on premises are physical telephones. And they tend to be pretty hardened, and oftentimes don't have a lot of access to really do anything. They're not very high powered computers. They don't run typically known operating systems and things like that. So all of those voicemail servers and gateways and session border controllers and VPN gateways and call accounting servers and all those things, they all evaporate. They go away. They become not an attack vector, not something that needs to be updated, patched, maintained, and so forth. That's all out on the internet, outside of your purview, and presumably taken care of. One of the other thing about UCaaS and cloud services is that you typically have more flexibility in segmenting your network, separating the physical telephones from on a different network or a different VLAN or subnet or whatever that may be from the PCs, because no longer do you need to communicate directly between those devices, which was sometimes a requirement within the old PBXs. Here, everything just needs to get out to the internet. So you could have multiple exits out of the building, and the two don't need to talk to each other. That helps protect you and keep the two networks separate. The maintenance and the patching of all of this is all done by your cloud partner. It's not something that you need to schedule. It's not something you need to have expertise in. And it's typically something where IT departments are thinner on, is the expertise around the PBX. The other one, which is somewhat obtuse, is the notion, and it's likely true for any reputable cloud vendor, is that their budget and their expertise around security is typically larger than yours because they're a bigger company. It's a jump to say that you trust them inherently, but they are typically large enough that they have dedicated chief information security officers. They have relationships with teams. They are tightly regulated by the FCC because they are delivering voice and communications and so forth. So it's a fair assumption, I would say, I'll put my stake in the ground on that, to say that their budget to mitigate security risks is higher than yours, and is obviously concentrated on their offering only. And they tend to do a better job. Not to say that they're not impervious to this, but it's something that you should feel more comfortable that their focus is a little higher there. The other thing about the other bullet I have on here is about remote workers and remote access to the phone system. During the pandemic, we received hundreds of calls of people saying, I need to make my on-site premises-based phone system accessible from people working at home. And that required things like opening up holes in the firewall, opening up VPN concentrator ports, all kinds of access, because that phone system was on your office network. In the case of a UCaaS solution, a cloud-based phone system, all of those services are outside. And essentially, you only need egress from the network, so that you would not be required to open any inbound firewall rules for communication to come back to the telephones, to the software, and things like this. So right away, your security posture is tighter because all traffic is initiated outbound. It simplifies the requirement for what you've got publicly accessible, and it obviously reduces your attack vector significantly. So these are all non-exciting notions here, but less infrastructure on your network, less equipment to patch and maintain, the ability to segment, patching and maintenance maintained by your provider of the service, security and oversight of cybersecurity threats and mitigation all handled by them, and a simplification of your network access, realistically just allowing outbound. Key elements that are really realized, when you move to one of these services and so forth. There are some other things, sort of expanding on the carrier and their offering for UCaaS. These offerings, again, from a reputable offering, they tend to have their equipments in data centers that are either ISO 27001 or SOC 2 compliant. They have to go through security audits, and it's in their interest to keep these audits and these levels of security out there as a selling tool for them. But at the end of you're realizing the benefits of them being more secure. The other side of this is that all of the traffic that's traveling from either your physical telephones or your software on your PCs and things like that, that's all 100% encrypted for many of these services out there, even the telephone call and so forth that we are doing, so that you're less likely to have somebody be able to tap into that conversation and find out some secret information. So even though we're using the internet, which is a bit of sort of a Wild West, we are traveling in sort of an encapsulated secure shell of encryption for all the traffic. Is that not all vendors do this, but it is I would say almost a requirement out there in an offering, is to have all of that traffic, not just the software and the computer, but even you dialing a phone number and typing in your credit card number on the keypad. You want all of that encrypted as it heads out to the internet and out to the provider and so forth. A couple of the terms on my slide here, using SIP secure over TLS with SSL certificates and secure RTP encrypted and so forth. These are all the buzzwords out there for all of that. And then you obviously want to make sure that everything is, even if you're running an app on your smartphone for your UCaaS provider, you want to make sure that's all encrypted as well. The other part of some people moving to the cloud pause is the sort of the loss of control of the data. There's not as much data in the UCaaS world if you stay purely within a voice world. It's conversations, it's call history, maybe it's voicemails and so forth like that. Typical UCaaS providers, they're offering far more than that. They're typically offering text messaging and instant messaging. Some of them offer file storage and team collaboration. They tend to offer recording of meetings and webinars like this. Many of the good providers out there do actually all not only encrypt in transit, like we talked about the previous slide, but they'll actually also encrypt at rest, so that any attack wouldn't be able to get the data, because once it's there, it's being encrypted in their storage as part of that. The other side of it is being able to administer centrally, offer roles so that different players, both in your organization and the partner you deal with, their access to your call history or things like that is segmented and protected. The other side of it is, as we start talking about people in UCaaS running software applications on their phones or their PCs, you want to make sure, which is easily done in the cloud and very difficult to implement on site, are things like multi-factor authentication, so that if you do fire up your soft phone from an unknown location, it's made sure that you really are who you are, that you're not taking over someone's account. Maybe even having geographic blacklist and whitelisting to say you can only access the administrative website from the United States. There's really no reason someone should be making an administrative change to your UCaaS system from the Middle East, for lack of a better place. These are things that are all baked into all these solutions, or at least all the good ones out there. And again, far beyond what you could pull off on your 15-year-old premises-based PBX. That's kill. Most of the systems all offer audit trails. So if you did need to go back to see who made a change, you'd be able to find out date, time, location, all that kinds of stuff. Really part of it as well. The other part of this discussion on this slide talks about sort of ease of end user access. That's one of the battles in the security world, is to deal with the sort of cooperation of the end user to deal with high security restrictions, but not make their life horrible. right? Sort of a trade-off. Single sign-on scenarios are some of those where it's less usernames and less passwords to remember, right? One example of that is that many of these platforms will allow you to use another single sign-on service to log into their applications rather than having to build yet another username and password. So oftentimes people will, link their services to Microsoft Office 365 so they can use the same username and password to access the voicemail system for that. And then use their scenarios around multi-factor authentication and so forth like that. So these are good compromises between high security but convenience, sort of keeping that as well and doing it there. Easy to do in the cloud, if not impossible to do on your own premises-based system. So other things that are somewhat related to security, somewhat not, is that if you have an event that prevents you from getting to your office, a cloud-based communication system is going to work even if your office has no power for a week. Fire, flood, insurrection, whatever that may be, right? They spend a lot more money on data center redundancy, having multiple geographically related connected data centers on different sides or all four parts of the country or overseas and things like that, protecting against natural disaster. These are more generic incident response mitigation here than security. Being able to granularly change who can access what, geographically blacklisting or whitelisting logins so that people aren't doing things from different places. And then stuff you didn't even think about, like potentially turning off a service that you don't use so it's not accessible for people. So for example, many of these cloud communication systems allow you to send and receive text messages to your office number. These are features that can be disabled if you desire, because maybe it doesn't fit within your company's security practices or discovery practices or whatever that may be. So a lot of these cloud services still let you turn on and off certain features, sometimes globally, sometimes by user, to help either tighten restrictions or get you, put your herd of cats under control a little better. There are some folks out there who have security restrictions around privacy, HIPAA, PCI, and so forth like that. Being able to turn off things like delivery of faxes to email and make people have to go to a secure portal to get it. There are ways to meet both convenience and keep security as well as that. And then, all of these platforms, again, I'm caveating always, the good platforms, they tend to have pretty good monitoring and analytic platforms for you both to look at activity. Why was so-and-so calling the Netherlands at night? Why was somebody logging into the administrative console from a weird location geographically? Was that person really traveling or not? I mean, these are things that we see in Microsoft Office 365, and many of these platforms have unusual login detection heuristics to alert you of things like that. So all these things could technically be done on a premises-based system, but I haven't seen very many of them, pull them off. And a lot of these things are much easier to deliver in scale in the cloud, which is why more people are seriously thinking when they're at a decision point about their premises-based system: do I refresh it? Do I upgrade it? Or do I replace it with an offering that has the benefits of all the things we've talked about and here and so forth? I will talk about some experience here. Ransomware attacks where typically the computer or computers or network and all the devices are encrypted and held for ransom until you either pay money in Bitcoin or stuff like that. We've had experience with customers whose systems were attacked and ransomed, and that included the infrastructure that ran the phone system. And it's certainly one thing to have your file server and your email go down because of ransomware, but it turns it up to a whole different level when no one can call you because your phone system is down because of a ransomware hack too. Many of the phone systems out there from Cisco and Avaya and Mitel and ShoreTel and Panasonic and all the older ones too, any one of those ones with a computer that's part of the core, whether it's delivering call accounting or voicemail or auto attendant or call center functionality and all those kinds of things, those servers and devices are just as vulnerable to ransomware attacks as your desktop PC. And the impact of that is pretty severe. Again, as we cascade, where IT shops often don't include these hardware pieces in their backup infrastructure because it's weird or old or they don't understand how it works. It's even made worse by the fact that this machine that's just now been in ransomware encrypted is 15 years old, and the only person who's around that remembers how to build it from scratch retired 2 years ago or whatever. So it's like driving around in a really old car that nobody knows how to fix and hoping you don't get into an accident. So very high risk factor there on ransomware. And here, if we flip the tables and we say you've migrated to UCaaS and cloud-based voice, there are no servers on site. The only equipment you've got is a telephone. And gosh, if that got wrecked, unplug it, use something else, replace it, use a soft phone or whatever. Your recovery plan is much, much faster and so forth like that. So this is a big risk factor for some people. Imagine if you're a doctor's office and your main number isn't answered or answers with dead air because that voicemail system's been taken down and it takes 3 days to repair or something like that. This is really, really, really tough. So a huge, huge risk factor there. Not trying to make this purely a scare sale too, but these are things that you need to be aware of. So John, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about, in general, how people are responding to threats or preparing for them probably a little better.
Yeah, no, really, really important subject. Great information to Jeremy. So really you want to be, this is a difference maker right here. When something happened, and you will have incidents. Somebody's going to click on something, there's some software, there's something that's going to happen at some point, and it's how you respond. So you want to make sure you have an incident response plan, and you identify, hey, these are the things that can go wrong, and when they go wrong, these are the steps and the actions that we're going to take. It's so important. And then to make sure, the technical part is huge. It's enormous, but there are other parts like legal, like crisis communications, like if everybody's network if your network goes down, or if you did get ransomed, how would you communicate, right? Because they've taken over your network. So things like that you have to take into consideration and build a plan. And I know we do this, Jeremy. We practice it. We go through different scenarios and practice the plan, and we end up changing the plan and tweaking it every time. So yeah, that's my two
Yep.
cents on that.
And really, our follow-up, slide at the end, is just start thinking about steps. Create a culture, train people, review what you have, segment your network, monitor stuff, have a plan, and then repeat. Rinse and repeat, never ends. UCaaS, the phone system, yet another part of something you're responsible for, and yet another vector for the bad actors to to sort of talk about what it is that you can do to address some of these risks. So thanks for participating today. If we have any questions, we can get to those. Kristen?
Hey guys, yeah, sorry, just give me 1 second. Let me bring them back up. Okay, just a couple questions. Do most UCaaS solutions offer the option to monitor for fraudulent activity with alerts or any real-time warnings?
Some of them do, yeah. I mean, it's really dependent on the vendor. Fraudulent activity typically is around, calling international, where the costs are typically up. Most of the UCaaS solutions tend to build in a bundle of free calling. So the risk is a little bit lower, but not entirely. But many of them offer either reporting you can run interactively or proactive alerts for unusual logins or activity like that.
Great. Is my provider responsible for the security side of my system? If not, what is the most helpful thing we can do as a company?
So I'm not a legal expert, so I'm not going to give you any legal advice. Somebody who sells you a piece of equipment and maintains it has a level of responsibility to respond to your problems. But I don't know whether I would say that they're responsible for the upkeep of the security side of that, unless it's explicitly defined in your agreement with them. Things get a little bit different and in software or services as a service like UCaaS and things like that, where they're offering you a service and it is their responsibility and it's written to their contract too. But I think the relationship there with a vendor who sold you a piece of equipment and maintains it is very very different from that of a software as a service or communications as a service.
Great. Is moving to UCaaS considered zero trust?
John, I'm going to let you try to take a stab at this one too. Zero trust is a pretty big category there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
This is it's a part of your zero trust overall strategy, yeah, because it segments, gets it off of your network. So it fits zero trust. If someone says they want to sell you one piece of technology that's zero trust, you have to be very leery. Zero trust is a combination of best practices, including policies, procedures, data classification, network segmentation, all these different things. So from that aspect, I'd say, yeah, it's a part of it. It
Okay.
can be a part of your strategy.
And do you offer or have recommendations for security training around UCaaS?
So I don't know if we have any specific curriculum specifically around UCaaS. I think a lot of the traditional security training is applicable in educating users around, how to mitigate vishing and phishing attacks and things like that. Um, but I don't know anything specific about the mechanics of the platforms and security around those.
Okay. And last question, are there any supply chain issues with phones?
Yeah, there are. I mean, even with toilet paper, right? There are some manufacturers who are struggling more than others with supply chain issues. There are um, there are vendors who are mitigating that by retooling some of their platforms to put out new models that may or may not have a different feature set. I know one manufacturer built a different model of a phone that didn't have the Bluetooth chipset in it because they couldn't get them. So they put out a different model that had that feature missing. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a question to talk to other vendors about or partners about, what vendors have supply chain issues or not. And we don't see that necessarily changing for the better for much longer than people thought, I think into next year. But in UCaaS, there are obviously some more options there. I mean, typically those services have software only services, soft phones and mobile devices as software, and can take some of the heat of requiring physical hardware out of play a little bit.
Okay, those are all the questions that I have. So thank you guys. Thank you to all of our attendees who joined. If you have any follow-up questions, please let us know. Be on the lookout for that Giftly lunch gift card, and we'll let everybody know who the winners of the Amazon gift card are as well. Again, just a couple question survey once we end. It'll pop right up on your screen. Jeremy and John, if you guys are done or have nothing
Yep.
else, then we'll go ahead and end it a few minutes early.
No,
That's
thanks
great.
everybody for
All
attending.
great. Have a great day,
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
everyone.
Good job.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.